Hello, Gwen-Maker-of-Things. They say, I am a big picture thinker at work. I'm constantly zooming out to question what am I doing and how it fits into the wider strategy. This has led to issues where the boss man just wants the task done, never mind automation, documentation, or making it easier for the next person to do the thing. So I do the task, and then I create guidance for others in my own time. My big picture thinking does not equate to ambition, but I might be ready to play at a bigger scale. Thoughts? Oh, I have so many thoughts. This is great. This is great. You're making guidance for others in your own time. Don't do that. No, I get it. You are building a skill, and you've made a value assessment that it's worth you developing that skill off the clock. I saw Star Wars when I was 10, and I realized shortly after that people did that for a living, and I realized that I wanted to do that for a living. 20 years later, I was working at ILM, and that sounds like quite a linear path. It was not. I was in different states first part of that, and all sorts of different things happened. But once I got there, it was 20 years later, so I was 27. And I had spent the previous 10 years working in different industries and honing my skills, honing my craft, and also really thinking about where I wanted to go with these skills. Special effects model making was the very first thing I ever did where I realized it took all the parts of me and they could all be applied to the solutions here, and it felt deeply creatively satisfying. And so as I spent the time matriculating up through Jamie, through commercial, like 200 commercials working for Jamie, and then working on the Matrix sequels, working on other films, and then at ILM, when I first got to ILM, I actually realized I had a little bit of a crisis because I hadn't thought bigger than that ever. And so here I was like working on models, and I was like, I don't have something to shoot for here. I don't have something I don't have a goal. And so I was like really in heaven. I'm like working on models for episode 1, working on bank commercials, laser cutting with Don Bees. It was really exciting time. And still there was this part of me that's like, what's the next goal? What is the next goal? Like, I had lived so long for it that now that I had gotten to this place and I'd never thought bigger than it, I needed a new set of goals. And what happened over the next couple of years was that I really slotted into this amazing workplace that George Lucas built. I spent 3 years working on just some of the most beautiful and fun things I've ever gotten to work on with some of the best people I've ever gotten to work with. And it was just a great environment. And about 3 years in, I realized, okay, this is really great. This is really great. And I might want more than this. I might want to be making bigger decisions than this. And that was informed by the fact that, like you, Gwen-Maker-of-Things, I was a big picture thinker. And so I liked talking to my art director and finding out not just the aesthetic solution we were solving here, but how that fit into this thing. And each time I worked with an art director, they understood that I was that kind of thinker. And frequently, Peter Rubin, Alex Laurent, I would get more freedom, Doug Chang, Nakabayashi, I would get more freedom from them once they understood that I was understanding more of the big picture. So if your boss man doesn't understand or care or think that is something that is useful, what they're not realizing is that you're like an ideal person to have on a crew. Right? Like when you talk about people when I was talking just now about management being a different skill set, the skill set that you are exhibiting is a management skill set. You're looking at a process and wondering, how could that be easier now? How could that be faster, safer now? How could it also be those things for the next person? That's deep management and systemic thinking, and that's awesome. And I've also had employees come up to me. God, I remember in theater, this would happen all the time, and be like, hey, what about that thing? And you'd be like, stay in your job. That's not what I'm worrying about right now. I have definitely said that to employees that were like bringing up things that were way off the beaten path. So you don't necessarily have ambition, but I might suggest that you consider matriculating into a management position. Yeah, those are my thoughts, Gwen-Maker-of-Things. I think that what you've described here is the natural proclivity of a natural manager. And you might really start to consider how you would slot into a position like that, what you might desire as compensation, how you'd like that job to go. Oh, right. There is another question I had here. Yes, Phil Redbeard. Phil Redbeard, I'm about to answer your question. Gwen-Maker-of-Things. I am a believer that understanding the big picture has always made me better at my job. As a manager, I like giving everyone as much of the big picture as possible. But as an employee, I would seek out the biggest picture I could get, even if my manager wasn't giving it to me, in the interest that it would make my job better. I hope that is useful, Gwen. You can do a lot of good in the world as a manager of people. Okay, Phil Redbeard. Phil Redbeard is being laid off in a month. And while losing their job is hard, even more difficult, they say, is working this last month knowing that it's ending. Any encouraging words as they look for replacement employment while still finishing their current job? It sounds like a non-hostile separating of ways, which I appreciate. You're not being escorted to the door with your desk in a file box. You are right. This past week, I gave the commencement address at the Stevens Institute of Technology in New Jersey, and it is a marvelous technical school with a great student body, about 1,000 undergraduates, and I talked to them about where they were, that a graduation is specifically a celebration of things ending. And now they're about to enter this phase between school and the rest of their lives. And these liminal spaces are really hard for us as human beings. I hate moving house. We used to do this series on the Tested channel called The Talking Room, in which I would interview people. And we would do it in the library of my house here in the Mission District. And the library of my house is this beautiful room, 4 walls lined in books. It's and when we moved into the house, those shelves were empty for only 45 minutes. I put all of our books up on those shelves right away because I needed one room that felt like ours, that felt like home. I hate moving house. I hate being in that liminal space. I have talked before about Rainer Maria Rilke, the poet, and how much I love his book, Letters to a Young Poet. And in there, he's talking about liminal spaces. And he says to his charge, who's very upset about the end of a relationship, he says, are moments of sadness like this, where you are mourning the loss of something. He says, our moments of sadness are, they are difficult because you find yourself remaining in a place you cannot remain standing. That is you currently at your employment. The past has left you, but the future has not yet taken hold. This is also your situation, Phil Redbeard. The past has left you, and the future is uncertain, and it hasn't taken hold. Rilke recommends to his charge, Klaus, I think his name is Klaus, to remain lonely and attentive in those moments between. And he says it's a desire to sort of move on, move forward, move to the next thing, run towards the next thing. That's a completely understandable desire. But he says if you remain lonely and attentive, it is at those moments, reflecting upon the past and reflecting upon the future, when the real future for you takes hold in you. The anchors for the future take hold. And so I'm going to give you something to be lonely and reflective about, Phil Redbeard, which is to say, you are leaving this job. Like I said, it doesn't sound like it's an exit full of enmity. So I would counsel you to spend some time looking around your workplace and think about the aspects of it that you like and think about the aspects that you don't like. Think about the coworker interactions that work for you and why, and think about the ones that don't work for you and why. And the reason it is also, think about how your job feels to you to execute, and think about the delta between that and what you want your job to feel like to execute. And these meditations, which I often say is like you're meditating more on how your future job should feel than how it should be. I think of that meditation as a very powerful practice, because we're not smart enough to know how our future is going to slot into us. We're not smart enough to game that, but we are smart enough to look for what we want in broader terms. I have always wanted an employment. I've wanted acknowledgement for the work I've done. I've wanted interesting problems to solve. I've wanted colleagues that collaborated. And everything I did between jobs was about looking for more opportunities to do that, but also really specifically staying awake to the places that satisfied those criteria. And the reason to meditate on how you want the future to feel is that when the future arrives and it's the right one, you might just recognize it because you've been thinking about it. This is why, this is why I'm agnostic, but I say that prayer actually works, because meditating on the things that are important to you on a regular basis is a deeply powerful practice, personally, interpersonally. And so you have this month, Phil Redbeard, to think about how what you've been doing has been going, and to think about what is your wish list for how you want things to go when the future arrives. That's a tricky one. I'll tell you one more story, which was, I made Mythbusters for 14 years. And a year before we were finishing, I was doing 6 months before we wrapped the show, I was doing an appearance here in San Francisco at Sketchfest with the Thrilling Adventure Hour people, among whom is the inimitable Paget Brewster. And I know I've told this story on the channel before. I'm going to tell it again. Paget said, "How's it going? How's the show?" And I said, "Actually, it's ending. We're wrapping it up." And she was like, "Oh, really? How long have you been doing it?" And I was like, 13 years. And she was like, "Oh, sweetie, you're going to go nuts." I was like, "Really? What?" And she said, "Yeah, I was on CSI for like 6 years. And even that, like finishing it, ending it, and not going to work that next Monday was awful." She's like, "I went a little insane. And so you just go easy on yourself." Like a better bit of advice I have rarely been given in my life. And it is so loving of Paget to have given me that, because she was right. I was a little nuts. So that's the other thing. You're about to end a job and there might not be another one waiting for you. And there's going to be this period, this transitional period. It's going to suck. Yeah, there's no way around that. Those transitions are the hardest things, man. Transitions are the hardest things. They're where you forget your keys. They're where you put your hat in the wrong place. Transitioning between houses, I described being really awful. Transitioning between jobs. It's funny also, because when I write, the last thing I always end up dealing with in my writing is the transitions from subject to subject. So when I write out something, I often will write out all my thoughts, and then I'll look at what I've written and realize that it's completely upside down, and that I've got to start with the point and move the inverted pyramid and move down to the details. And then after I have solved structure, the hardest part for me of writing is, like, have I introduced each new subject correctly? Have I set it up so that the transition to it isn't a harsh transition? Good luck, Phil Redbeard. Go easy on yourself in the liminal spaces. The delta between the past and the future is always really fraught. Good luck. Thank you for watching. I wanted to talk to you about Tested membership. The Tested members are a key community that we find really, really remarkable. That's very separate from Tested and from YouTube. The Tested members, they buy each other memberships during our live streams. So if you're wondering whether to become a member, watch one of our live streams and someone may just give you one. It is hard to overestimate how much the Tested members actually make possible on this channel. They give us a lot of wiggle room. They give us a huge amount of feedback.
that's a member right now.
Thank you so much for enjoying your membership. Description for everything you need to know. And for all the members out there, thank you, thank you, thank you.